Welcome back to Only Talk Sports. We talk sports every single day, or at least we try to. I'm Ernest Jeffrey. Subscribe to the channel if you like sports content. Hit that notification bell so you never miss our video. The NBA Finals are here. We do have more basketball after the NBA season is over with the TBT, but for most fans, this is the end of the line until college basketball and the NBA comes back around toward the end of this year. But in the NBA Finals, after all the fantastic playoff series that we have had, it's all come down to the Dallas Mavericks and the Boston Celtics. And even though the Boston Celtics are favored, and I believe that they're the best team in the NBA this season, I thought they were the best team in the NBA last year, but they fell short in the Eastern Conference Finals to the Miami Heat. A lot of people are backing the Dallas Mavericks, thinking that they are going to be able to knock off the Boston Celtics in the NBA Finals. I did a Twitter poll around a week ago asking people who they thought were going to win right after the conference finals ended, and 56% of people voted for the Dallas Mavericks, and 44% of people voted for the Boston Celtics, picking that they were going to win the NBA title this year. And even though that is close to 50-50, the Boston Celtics are favored in Game 1 over the Dallas Mavericks by a hefty 6 points. And usually the home court advantage gives you around 3 points. So that means that the odds makers think that Boston is around 3 points better than the Dallas Mavericks. So if the Boston Celtics are the team that is favored to win, why are more people thinking that Dallas is going to end up knocking off Boston? I believe it's just because Boston hasn't been trustworthy. You can't trust the Boston Celtics as far as you can throw them, and I don't blame people for thinking that way, because I've thought that Boston, with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, two of the best players in the NBA, one of the best duos in the NBA, that they would have already won a title by now with all of the talented teams that they have had. But they have always fallen short. They've made the finals one time a couple years ago, but they still were not able to win a title, and Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown still don't have a title under the belt, despite the fact the Boston Celtics have 17 titles throughout their franchise history. But Dallas, they've got a fantastic duo of their own in Kyrie Irving and Luka Doncic, who you can argue have been the best duo in the NBA this entire season, even over Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. And I asked people on Twitter which player will have the best NBA Finals performance, and Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving got most of the votes. So if that's any indicator, Dallas does have a really great chance to win. But I still think Boston is the best team, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the best team is always going to be able to win the title, because Boston has fallen short before. I'm going to go over whether I believe the Dallas Mavericks or the Boston Celtics are going to win the 2024 NBA title, and how many games I think it's going to take for that team to end up winning the championship this season. Now, I think this is going to be a hotly contested series. I think it's going to go down to the wire, and I wouldn't be a bit surprised if it goes all the way to 7 games, because both of these teams have 2 stars at the top. There's not really any bit of lopsidedness in that department, because when you look at the scoring at the top, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown for the Boston Celtics average 26 points per game and 25 points per game respectively. So that's barely over 50 points combined between the two players. And then you go over to the Dallas Mavericks with Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving. Luka averages 28, Kyrie averages 23, and that's a little bit over 50 points as well, just like Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. So the 2 stars at the top, it is basically even, and we know that they're going to give it 110% every single game. Kyrie Irving, though, he does have a title under his belt. He won it back in 2016 with the Cleveland Cavaliers when he was with LeBron James, and I don't think that's going to, in any way, shape, or form, lower Kyrie Irving's intensity in this series. He has been on fire. He's been playing some of the best basketball almost of his entire career, even at his age right now, and I think he is hungry for another title. Luka certainly is, because prior to Kyrie Irving coming to the Dallas Mavericks and some of the trades that they have made recently to make their team better, Luka Doncic has had several teams that have struggled, and he hasn't really been able to have a lot of success in the NBA playoffs or even get close to sniffing a title. So you know he wants to get it done. But with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown having all of these great playoff runs and getting close to winning a title and not getting there, they're hungry. I think they want to get it done, and they are determined as ever to showcase that they are the best team in the NBA for once by cashing off with an NBA title. They've even said so themselves that they feel like this is a second chance for them being back in the finals, and they know there's a lot of great teams coming up like the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Indiana Pacers, who gave them a run for their money. The Indiana Pacers, even though they lost 4-0 to Boston, every single game was basically competitive, so Boston can't take anything for granted. But they have done it without Kristaps Porzingis, and that's huge for Boston because they were able to get all the way here basically without him for the most part. But he's going to be back in this series. series. And some people say that there's going to be rust, that Kristaps Porzingis is not going to be effective because he's been sitting so long. But my thing is even if Kristaps isn't that effective, he can still give Boston around 20 to 25 minutes of solid play, and then Al Horford can play in the crunch time moments if Kristaps really isn't ready. But if he is, that's going to be a big difference maker for Boston, because that's going to be able to help offset what Daniel Gafford and Derek Lively have been providing for the Mavericks in these past few games. They've been fantastic in the NBA playoffs. And when you saw Derek Lively go down in one of their recent games, that's the only time that they lost to the Minnesota Timberwolves. Dallas would have ended up sweeping Minnesota just like Boston did to Indiana if Derek Lively didn't go down, in my opinion, for that one game. But luckily for Dallas, they are entirely healthy. But everybody wants to give the attention to the stars. But I believe that the role players are going to be very important as well, because guys like Derek White, Drew Holiday, Kristaps Porzingis, and even Al Horford, they all average 10 or more points per game. And that is huge to have four guys that aren't your two best players that all basically score consistently. Drew Holiday is a really good defender, and he does not get enough credit for his scoring. Derek White has improved and improved as a player. When they made that trade with the Spurs a few years ago, a lot of people thought that was a terrible trade to get rid of Josh Richardson and Romeo Langford for Derek White. But that ended up being one of the sneakiest great trades in the past few years. And then when you go down even further for Boston, Peyton Pritchard is a solid player. He has been with the Celtics for a few seasons now, and he's just continued to stay on the roster by his great play, his great three-point shooting. And even though he's undersized and he was a senior coming out of college, and a lot of times those guys don't stick around, Peyton Pritchard's done a fantastic job carving out a significant role on the Celtics roster. Sam Hauser, he has not played very well for the Boston Celtics in these NBA playoffs. That's been their one weak link. He's a really good shooter, but he has mightily struggled these past few games for Boston. If he could get it going again, that would just add an entire new dimension to the Celtics roster, having another bench player that can score consistently. Luke Cornett, he should play less if Kristaps Porzingis is healthy and getting a lot of minutes in these NBA finals, but he's actually been a decent bench player for the Boston Celtics this season when he's been needed. But Dallas, they don't have as much scoring behind Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving, but PJ Washington, his acquisition from the Charlotte Hornets was one of the best trades of this entire season. Bad move by the Charlotte Hornets to get rid of him, because PJ Washington is just getting better and better, and he has turned into a consistent third option for the most part for Dallas, something that they did not have prior to that trade. Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving needed somebody else that could step up and score consistently. PJ Washington's been that guy. Derek Jones has been playing much better as of late. He's averaging around 10 points per game. Daniel Gafford and Derek Lively, they basically give the exact same production when it comes to scoring, but Daniel Gafford and Derek Lively are two different players that have different skill sets, but both have been great under center for the Dallas Mavericks, and I think it's huge that they can play around the same amount of minutes per game in the NBA playoffs. Look at their minutes distribution. Both Derek Lively and Daniel Gafford have played 22 minutes per game, basically. That's massive because none of them get tired. None of them foul out. That makes it very tough on opposing teams to slow down both bigs, but I think Boston with Kristaps Porzingis and Al Horford should be able to do a pretty good job against them. Maxi Keebler, he missed a few games in the NBA playoffs this year with an injury, but he's back now for Dallas. That's big for them to be able to have all of their players back healthy again. He's not a guy that scores a lot, but he is an underrated player that does a lot of the little things for Dallas. Then you got guys like Josh Green, Tim Hardaway, and Jaden Hardy, and Dante Exum to a lesser extent. All of them play a little bit for Dallas, and they give some production off the bench, but they don't really score all that much, and they just kind of are in the game to give the starters some rest and be able to provide a little bit on offense and just don't really blow it on defense. But that's where I'm a little bit worried for Dallas, because I know people are saying Dallas is the better team right now because of Doncic and Irving, and even with PJ Washington, Derek Jones, and the two bigs, production and Lively and Gafford. But I still feel like that their team from top to bottom is worse than Boston. Boston has so many players that can step up and score, and even if Jason Tatum, who arguably has had some rough games in these NBA playoffs, hasn't played all too well in all the games, but those other players on the team have stepped up. Derek White can give you 30. Drew Holiday can give you 25. Kristaps, if he's healthy, can give you 20, even though a lot of people say he struggles in the playoffs. I just think that Boston from top to bottom is the the best team in the NBA. And this year, even though they've had a few games where they have struggled, they have shown it for the most part. They are determined. I believe that we are going to see the Boston Celtics give it 110% to be able to win this NBA title and get that monkey off their back that Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown can lead the Boston Celtics to an NBA title. I think the Dallas Mavericks, though, they're a very dangerous team, and they have gotten better and better as the season gone along with the additions of Daniel Gafford and PJ Washington especially, and drafting Derek Lively. This is a much better team than Dallas was a year ago, and even though they're the 5 seed, they might as well have been the 1 seed in the West the way that they have been playing. But I do think, for whatever reason, I think they're going to fall just short. I think it's going to go to 7 games, but the Boston Celtics, in my opinion, are going to end up winning the 2024 NBA title over the Dallas Mavericks. You might not be able to trust Boston as far as you can throw them, but I think they're going to find a way to squeak out a NBA title win this year over the Dallas Mavericks. If it's not going to be this year, when is it going to be? That's just my opinion. I don't think that there's any way that Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are going to ever not go without winning a title, and I think this is their year to finally win their first of possibly more to come if they can get back to the NBA Finals again in the future. But the Dallas Mavericks, they're not going to give up without a fight, and with their team, they're going to have to play fantastic defense on the Boston Celtics if they're going to want to be able to knock them off in the NBA Finals. And if they do that, there is a chance they can win, but I think they're just not going to have enough scoring. Boston's going to be able to score enough to be able to knock them off, because Indiana was a better offensive team, and Boston still outscored them every time. And Boston's defense is good enough with guys like Derek White and Drew Holiday that they should be able to slow down Dallas's role players just enough for the Boston Celtics to be able to squeak out an NBA Finals win to get an NBA title in 2024. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Whether you are an anti-Boston Celtics believer and you think that they will fall short yet again, and that this is Dallas's year to get their first NBA title since Dirk Nowitzki was on the team back in 2011, and Luka Doncic is going to be able to get his first title, and Kyrie Irving will be able to get his second, or whether you believe like me that this is the Jays' year with Tatum and Brown finally being able to lead the Celtics to an NBA title win, and what you think about my predictions for the 2024 NBA Finals. Subscribe to the channel if you like sports content. Like this video down below. Follow me on Twitter as well. Link is in the description, and I'll see you next time.